Welcome to The Wire. I'm Chris, and in 2009, Rob Machado had a crisis that spawned The Drifter, a film about his wanderings in Indonesia. And it wasn't until 11 years later that he revealed for the first time publicly what that crisis was that inspired The Drifter. And he did it, he revealed it, within the printed pages of the Surfer's Journal, volume 29, number 1, newly released at surf shops for you to read right now. But first, today, I'm fortunate to be with Nathan Meyers, who did not just write this brand new piece for the Surfer's Journal, he also was the screenplay writer on the Drifter film, suffering through more than 13 different screenplay edits, along with the rest of the crew, who were all dealing with separate nightmares in the jungles of Indonesia. People got sick. People went insane. They got in fights, they ruined relationships, and 11 years later, they all approved this new article for release, airing everyone's dirty laundry from back in 2009, 2008, and 2007. Show notes for this episode are at firewiresurfboards.com/the-wire. And the first thing that I asked Nathan in this episode was, tell us what The Drifter was.
The Drifter was a biopic of Rob Machado made in from 2007, 2008, and then released in 2009. Like the optics on it, like made by Taylor Steele, and it was, like Taylor and Rob's journey starts in the early 90s, with Seaside and Beyond, and then grows into, they made, Drifting together. Drifting was Rob's first biopic. So it was like all these years had passed, and Taylor was living in Indonesia, Rob was staying in Indonesia, and he had like kind of a personal crisis, and it was Taylor's kind of idea, like, let's find a reason for Rob to stay in Indonesia a lot longer and just kind of be with friends and be with the community there and just stay here, not go home and have to deal with that crisis at home, So The Drifter was kind of dreamed up as like, well, let's do a film, let's do a project.
And how did you get involved in The Drifter? What was the moment where you learned of it and someone brought you onto the project?
So I was an editor at Surfing Magazine at that time, and I'd been there like 5 or 6 years. And was kind of like fishing around, like, okay, what am I gonna do next, And I kind of cooked up this idea at Surfing to do a all Bali issue. Bali was kind of like blowing up and becoming the new North Shore and stuff, and I just wanted to go over and hang out. So I went over and did basically a whole issue by myself, just like, this is by this guy, these are interviews, just kind of like, it wasn't my name on everything, but I did every piece of that and spent this like month over there and brought my wife along, kind of showing her like, hey, look at this scene over here. And we were just like, how fast can we go home, get rid of all our stuff, and move back here? We were just like ready to turn it around. And that's the time that the conversation around The Drifter was sort of starting and stuff. So I was friends with Dustin, who was a photographer for Surfing Magazine. I was friends with Taylor because we were, Surfing was sponsoring Trilogy and Stranger Than Fiction and stuff. Yeah. So I was going on all those trips with those guys. So it was kind of like a merry little band. I was friends with Macaulay Jones, and that was like kind of the little like Canggu community over there. So right when we moved in, we had kind of the answers to all our questions, like, hey, how do we do this and how do we do that? It was like pretty easy and turnkey to be an expat at that time. And we just went like, wow, this is good.
And is it Taylor that calls you and tells you about The Drifter for the first time?
I think Dustin called me about that one. We were doing Castles in the Sky at the time too. So we were spending like 2-week, 3-week chunks on the road together throughout the year doing big travels. And so we'd have these long drives and we'd sit and dream up ideas and stuff and talk about projects and stuff. So there are always these ideas like floating around. When you drive, you just sit and chat and talk,
And your role, your job, your title on the Drifter production was what?
Writer.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is just like jump in and get involved, and they'd be just like, here, hold this. And, I just kind of like to do everything and I just like full body jump in to things like that.
Yeah.
And we were doing, literally the day I moved to Bali with like my whole world on my back, we got rid of everything at home. I got a quiver of new surfboards, and that was it. That's all I brought to Bali, was all I owned. And the first day I took meetings about Stranger Than Fiction, which we were writing all the comedy skits for,
Mm-hmm.
the next Castles in the Sky trip, which we were planning, and then like this idea of like the Drifter. What's the Drifter gonna be?
So before we get into some details, is it accurate to say that at the time the surf video business model was like at its most thriving?
Probably. It was doing well.
The
it was
long-form
probably
surf video
Yeah,
business.
yeah, like films, and it was a totally different model. Like it was based on DVD sales. You know, that was this like thing. You know, you didn't even think about like it going to iTunes or that just wasn't a thing yet. Or being on YouTube or being on someone's. Those weren't aspects of the business model.
It was really making films and selling the films to end consumers. Now, the Drifter, and I mean, there's so much that I want to unpack about this article that you wrote. I think that a fun way to sort of set the stage for it is the Drifter was like a big cinematographic film budget. I mean, in the article, and I don't want to give away everything in the article because people should read it, but you do say in the article, call it a $500,000 budget.
Yeah, it was probably under that, but then I don't know what came in on the back end and final production and everything like that.
And you're flying in other editors last minute you hadn't planned on, and I mean, it's just
so much is happening. Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the budgets. I wasn't really. I was pretty external to that. I was just like, wow, look at all this going on. I was like clinging to the coattails of the whole project because I thought it was so cool and so fun.
So the project that you were clinging to, though, it had really big coattails. You had a distribution deal with a big movie studio. You had a big proper budget. You had tons of people involved on the project. And I mean, I really want to ask you from the get-go, what went wrong with the Drifter?
I mean, that's the whole nature of the story and stuff, like that's what's there. I mean, so many things went wrong. There was like personal conflicts. There was just the intensity of it all. I think so here's what happened. Like Taylor here's what happened initially that set up it in this direction was that Taylor had two other projects on, and he was like, look, I can't take a third film on right now. I'm doing Castles in the Sky, I'm doing Stranger Than Fiction, but Dustin here really wants to do a film. And Dustin had a long history with film, like, and Indonesia. And Dustin knows Indonesia really well. Like, he's got a map of Indonesia tattooed on his arm, and it's in his heart and in his blood. And he's married an Indonesian woman, and he'd been there about 10 years at that time. And he'd been doing all these feral trips with like Timmy and Ryan Turner and McCullough, and he knew all sorts of spots all over. And the idea was like, let's hit all these spots and everything. So Taylor was like, look, Dustin can do this, and he wants to do this film, and this is like gonna be his baby. And Dustin had a grand vision, like we're gonna do this like dark movie, because I mean, at the time, I mean, it's such a tough issue to address, and it's like Rob's business, but the idea was that, like, I mean, not the idea, I guess, like Rob's wife had left. He was going through a divorce.
She left.
And she had like taken the kids and went back to Reunion Island.
And you talk about the heart-wrenching details of how Rob found out in the article.
He was broken. He was shattered. That was like everything to him. He's a sensitive guy, and family. Rob's family is really tight. They're really good people, and family is just like super everything to him. And he was shattered. And Taylor's really close friend wanted to kind of shelter him and protect him, and everyone else around him was like, come on, let's do this. Let's put your focus on this project. And they were doing all this filming. They were filming for Stranger Than Fiction as well, So they were doing all this filming, and like Rob's kind of surfing changed in that experience. He just like paddle out, and that's your safe place. That's where you're away from everything. And he was like pouring this emotion into his surfing. And like everybody was kind of going, he's surfing different right now. He's like, it wasn't.
So his surfing was this response to like a personal crisis.
It was.
And I really want to get into one of your themes in the article. Look, you got to realize this article is something I've been waiting for a decade. Because what happened with me is The Drifter came out. I went to the premiere at La Paloma that you have photos of in the article. I came home, and there was something on either Surfer or Surfing, I can't recall, an article about The Drifter, and I wrote in the comments section, I wrote, you guys, I was so excited for this film The trailers came out. It looked like Rob had serious problems. I was expecting something raw, and what I got was this gorgeously red camera filmed, like, acting or like portrayal of Rob's life by Rob, but it's not Rob. And I was super confused by it. And Taylor Steele actually commented in response to my comment, and I can't remember what he said, but I can remember the WTF moment that I had from the trailer to the actual film, because I thought I was going to get reality TV. And what I got was like a film noir, very produced thing. You talk about that in the article. Like, in your mind, what was the film? And was it originally intended to be a raw, real discussion of what Rob's personal life was at the time? And when and how did that change?
I mean, it went through a bunch of incarnations. Like, that was the initial idea. Like, let's take this divorce thing head on. Rob wants to talk about it. He wants to be open about it. He's going to go on trips with his good friends, and they're going to sit down and we're going to record candid conversations. And through it, he's going to like find himself, be redeemed through surfing. And when I say surfing, I mean like the travel of it and the time you spend with people on boats and getting there and looking for things and all the highs and lows and ups and downs of it all and stuff.
Yeah.
So that, like, through that, he would come back to himself and find his redemption. That was the initial concept, and then that it was going to be very cinematic too. We got one of the first red cameras.
Yeah.
It was numbered. I can't remember the number. I think it was number 9. Yeah. And so it was like, no one knew how to even use it, and red's its own format and everything. I mean, now they're pretty standardized and stuff, but those were like test units basically.
Really?
And we had a Hollywood cinematographer, Todd Heater, super talented guy, works on big projects and stuff. But he was like a friend of the crew and loved surfing, and he was in to film it. And it was just a kind of a radical crew on everything. And, we were filming with Kelly and Dane and Curran. And,
I mean, you talk about it.
They were all there. None of them are in the movie, but they were all there.
But did you actually record conversations like with Rob and Dane Reynolds talking about Rob's divorce?
We tried.
and where did those fall off? How did it not work? I mean, you're filming them, and what's going through your mind as you're looking at Rob Machado talk about his divorce with Kelly or Curran or Dane, and what didn't work there?
The cameras being on it and people with mics on them, and then even trying to get those conversations rolling and stuff. And I think the subtext that, like, we didn't have a good season of waves that year. That Indonesia is pretty reliable, and that was not a good season. And because I think you get a good one, then you get a bad one, then you get and we just were like fell in the off cycle, and it was hard work to find waves. And those guys were working so hard, like up before dawn, back after dark, driving all over.
You make the point that you say it's owed to someone that you got as good a waves as you did on film.
To Dustin. And Dustin was cracking the whip and pushing hard. Tomorrow we're going to do this and we're going to get up this. And I think that sort of ground people down. But he had this pressure that, like, this is my first movie and it's going to be the best thing anyone's ever seen. And it's going to be completely different. No one's ever done anything like this. This is going to be a dark, heavy surf movie with this redemption at the end. It was a grandiose vision.
So you were considering,
and he put that pressure on himself, and that pressure was pushing, and then the pressure pushed on everyone else, and the crew was kind of like worn down and tense and like, oh, it's not good enough.
You talk about how that pressure broke him.
It did.
You talk about breakdowns, therapy.
Yeah, that all happened. I mean, but I had to go back and like clear this article with everyone before I went to print with it, because they're all my friends, and I didn't want anyone to feel like, hey, I just burned you in print or anything like that. That's like, I would never do that, like I wanted to write something deep and heavy, but I also didn't want anyone to be like, feel like I'd stab them in the back or anything. And I think through the course of that whole project, we all kind of went through our own personal through the fire, no one more than Rob, and we all sort of like, it took 10 years to be able to look back on it and go, whew, we survived that one.
But it sort of strikes me too, like there's this element of like, people were trying to make a career off this project. People were working on it, maybe you included. And as I'm reading the article, the subtext that caught my mind is like, this is a crew of guys sort of not at the level that Taylor is, with a well-set career and perceived stable income. I would imagine that you guys working on the project were like, this is going to set the tone for the next decade for me. Like,
we were like, this is going to be a theatrical release.
Yeah.
This is going to be and you know, you have those ambitions, and then, you know, things kind of fell like. There's definitely a trip where things went where it was just like the end of the line, where like Rob and Dustin weren't really talking to each other anymore, and they were the two key players. They were mom and dad pushing us along. You know, they were like the creative direction of the whole thing, and there was a lot of money going on this trip. We had Mike Stewart along filming in the water.
Really?
Yeah, and we had Dane Reynolds was with us, and Dan Malloy was with us, and all the cinematography crew was there, and we were staying in houses, but we were renting boats to try to go out to other islands and stuff. And that's where the Scream Corps band was playing at the like no one could sleep at that house. And then Dustin got really sick too, and he just like he was trying to push through his own illnesses. I think he had he didn't have malaria. He had dengue and typhoid at the same time.
That's unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
And he's stressed trying to bring out this massive vision for a film that someone's put around $500,000 on the line for. There's no waves. You're carting around with all these people, massive production team, on little boats, dinghies, motorcycles, no waves, searching for everything. I mean, it sounds like you guys were in one of the heaviest pressure cookers I've ever heard of. So many people had personal problems while this is all going on. You're setting up microphones and cameras and sitting Rob in front of Tom Curran and being like, okay, lights, camera, action. Talk about your divorce. Yeah. Talk about your wife leaving you. Talk about the way you found out in the imagery that was sent to you. I mean, like
no one could even, it just wasn't,
it
wasn't happening. And then it was like, no, this is not happening. Why is this failing in this context, you know? And then like that trip just kind of, it just like everything fizzled. People left. People just were like,
people quit.
My flight's out today. Dustin's in the hospital. I'm just going home. People didn't even go back to Bali. Some people, it just kind of fizzled. And then we all went back to Bali, and there was this sort of like loose communication. Mm-hmm. And no one was really reporting this all back to Taylor, who was off in America that whole time.
Yeah. Was this the first time Taylor took his success and sort of tried to manage it out for someone else to do a finished product?
No, I don't think so. And I think he'd planned to be there. This was just like the principal filming part of it, you know. And it was like, you know, film this stuff with Rob, and then I'll come in and oversee final production, make sure things are on course or anything like that. Like Taylor's a good manager of lots of people and lots of people. I mean, he's a director, you know. I've heard people complain and go, "Oh, Taylor just has a bunch of people do everything for him." It's like, I go, "Yeah, that's directing."
Yeah, and
that's
sounds like
that's what the word means.
There was a critical moment, and I appreciate how you wrote about this when he shows up in Bali and he's writing on a whiteboard and he's like, "All right, here I am. This is how we're going to try to save this thing." Before we get into that, though, I mean, you had to rewrite the screenplay 13 different times?
So many times. I put little version numbers. There's probably like 19 or 17. I can't remember exactly, but I just kept like, every time I'd rewrite it, it was almost like this point of, I knew we weren't done yet. So that's when I started putting version numbers on. I was like, because we'd go, yeah, in this trip, this is going to happen. And then something totally different would happen, and the conversations wouldn't get filmed, and we wouldn't get waves or something. So we go, oh, rewrite that part. You know, It's like, how can you pre-visualize a surf movie? You know? It was a bad idea from the start.
Give us an idea, though, for you to write a screenplay, because me and the audience, we're not screenwriters, right? Like, for you to write a screenplay, how long does it take to write a screenplay?
Your whole life.
Your whole life. and so you write a screenplay, and then you have to rewrite it, and then you have to rewrite it, and then you have to rewrite it.
That's writing. Good writing is rewriting. That's what my mantra, you know?
Well, you don't get into the article I mean, did you have a breakdown? Did you lose your mind at all? Did you ever consider quitting the project?
You know, at a certain point, I was like, Taylor sat me down and went, "Do you just want to take your name off this and just disassociate yourself, because this might be going sideways?" And mm-hmm. I was like, let me sit on that for a bit, you know. And then I was like, no, I can see that it's big. Mm-hmm. It's big. It's got all this energy behind it. Something's coming out.
Yeah.
I'll just put my name on it, you know. And like, Rob was writing journals all the time, and so we were like, these journals are part of it. Let's keep the journal entries in there and part of that. So, mm-hmm. I mean, the thing's kind of co-written by me and Rob, because it's Rob's, like, I was pulling stuff from his journals and going like, okay, let's use this and use that. And Rob was writing stuff in his journals and kept handing them over to me. And it was just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I even want to see this
No,
stuff. This is like gnarly.
You write about how discomforting it was for you to have Rob sharing the details in these journals with you.
It was difficult. Yeah. Like, I mean, I didn't want to be spilling this personal crisis onto the screen, but that was like,
but he was inviting you to.
That was the plan. Yeah. And it was like, okay, let's go. And that's cool. Let's do something deep and intimate, and let's do this, you know?
Now you do say that there was some point where it seems like there was a collective decision made that if we make this video about divorce, what good does it do anyone? Where were you guys when you made that decision to just leave the divorce narrative out, which was the founding narrative that got the project started in the first place?
Well,
who made that decision? Was it a group decision? Was it?
I mean, Rob's ex-wife came back to Bali and wanted to patch things up, you know, as divorce goes. It can be a rocky in and out period, and if there's kids involved, it's super complicated. Mm-hmm. And so like around the time she was coming back, and Dustin was like, I don't want them to patch things up.
So he wasn't joking. You wrote about this in the article where Dustin says, fuck no, I don't want them to get back together. It ruins my film. So he wasn't even joking. That was like, he was neck deep in this direction.
That's not a joke. Yeah, that's when the tension was really high too. And then it was like, oh, this changes everything. And as opposed to like working with that or adapting to that wrinkle, you know, it was like, no, like keep the course, and let's do that, and then
stay divorced, stay separated. There's $500,000 here. We're 3 months deep. Don't make the film go. So is that how Rob?
And that was right before that like breakpoint trip when all that came on, because that was like, well, let's get Rob out of here and let's go up to Java,
away from his wife.
And yeah,
it was like, let's get Rob away from his wife.
I mean, to some extent, maybe that's what Rob wanted too. I mean, it was 10 years ago. There's a lot of, and you know what? I also try to dip in that article to the idea that like memory is a very flawed device, and we all shift it and change it to fit our own personal narratives. You know, there's been all sorts of testing on how flawed and ridiculous memory is, but it's your reality, so you can't, all you know is what you think you know, and that might not be true. And so I would interview a lot of different people around a certain incident, and everybody would have different stories.
Really?
You know? So I would go, you know what? I say it in the article, I go, look, this is my version of it, and I'm sticking to it. No, but I mean, it's my version of it, but it's, you know, everybody has their own takes on it and their own views on it, and all I could do was do my best to sort of cobble it together and do that, you know.
Well, you had to cobble it together in the same way that it seems like The Drifter, in the end, had to be cobbled together.
Something had to be cobbled together, because it was like...
That was a lot of money. You had to have an outcome.
Yeah,
right?
Like at a certain point, like I think, you know, Hurley HQ was getting the vibe that like, hey, this thing might be in trouble. Can we see a version?
Who is it that asks? Is that Bob, or is that Evan?
I think it was Bob. I don't know. No, Evan wasn't there at that time. Evan was still at Surfing Magazine.
Okay.
And yeah, so I can't remember who exactly, but you know, the higher ups at Hurley wanted to see it and just see where the progress was, and they saw that, and they saw the cut that was existing, and they were like, no.
So give us a hint of what was the cut that was existing like?
I can't even remember that specific cut, because it just kept changing and evolving. There were so many editors.
Now let me zero in on the so many editors part, because one of the like balls of yarn that you untie here is the different filmers, the different editors, the new editor, the other editor, eventually getting offloaded to a different entity to edit. And you highlight this one point where Rob and Dustin Humphries aren't talking, and there's a new editor who Rob has invited into the project, and somehow Dustin is not getting along with this new editor that Rob brought over, or a new filmer that Rob brought over, or something to that effect. I mean, it just sounds like pure chaos.
There was that was probably earlier in the cycle. There was definitely a point where like a filmer that Rob had brought on and Dustin didn't get along, and like, I don't know, it was one drunken night they got in a fist fight or something.
Full fist fight. So you've got a filmer and a director.
It was more just like a momentary scuffle, you know, where someone gets pushed against a wall and someone pushes back, and you know, I think it was just that. I don't think I personally witnessed that one, but the guy was like told not to come back, you know, and yeah, so that was just signs of the growing tension. And then probably after that Java trip decomposed, that was like, and then Rob kind of called Taylor and was like, look, man, I think this thing might be over.
Yeah.
And Taylor was like, hello, what's been happening over there? He's like, no one touch anything. And
Yeah.
I'm coming back like this week. I'm gonna be back there in a few days. No one
Yeah.
do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and then he came back and he sort of took, like anyone who's ever worked with Taylor knows that he's a super cool cat. He's a custom. He can just like, there's always a problem and there's always a solution. Let's think it out. Let's solve this.
He can relax.
Just let's solve this. You know, like that's what like filmmaking is like overcoming problems. You know, because every shoot something's gonna go wrong. Can you overcome it or can you not? You know. So Taylor came back, took each person aside, got their side of the story, asked them what they wanted and stuff, and looked for a solution. You know, and.
You chose to stay. Dustin Humphries chose to leave.
Yeah, he was like, I don't think I can continue on with this. It's affecting my health. It's affecting my mentality. I feel combated with these people. And, you know, like Taylor was like, okay, well then you're going to take your name off it and not like try to submarine it later or something, you know, like, you know, talk any trash on it or undermine it or anything like that. Cause he had all this photography associated with it. He'd put a lot of work into it. It was really his baby to that point. And then once Taylor had taken stock of all that stuff, he put us all in a room and, you know, went like, I'll never forget that moment. Yeah. And he draws these funny cartoons on grease boards. He's a really funny cartoonist.
Yeah.
And,
I enjoyed that part a lot.
What would Wes Anderson do? Wes Anderson was super hot at the time, you know, and it was like, he's like, I'm not making a dark surf movie. That's just not me. I don't do that, you know? And Rob's in this like touchy point in a you know emerging divorce it's not looking good, and like this could cost him custody. This could come out as slander and libel and whatever, you know. So we can't go down that road anymore. So we need to completely turn this ship. And how do we do that? And it's like, well, we already filmed it. We can't do that. You know, it's like, nope, we can do it. We just need to solve it. Let's make it fun. Let's make it quirky. You know? And so this whole other like secondary shooting took off, you know, and it wasn't a lot of surf filming, but it was a lot of like other scenes and stuff, you know.
Did the budget have to be re-upped in order to do that, or was there
no? I think the crew was just still on. I don't really know the specifics of that, but I think it was just like let's create these scenes of all these other things. Let's rewrite this narrative. Let's get the, you know, let's have them find the bike, and I can't remember specifically which. I can't separate which scenes were which, and even talking to Taylor and talking to Dustin, everybody had kind of a hard time pulling apart which memories were which and whose bits were whose, and then you know, editors were brought in, and then that guy Bill Haugs, who was he'd edited the Basketball Diaries,
and he was flown in from LA to Bali.
Yeah, I was like, let's bring in this like ringer who has this sort of, who doesn't care about surfing, to come in and like fix it. And he like went into this room and he's like, no one can bother me for 3 days, and we all just kind of like, well, okay, we'll just surf and chill and cruise and wait to see it fix. He's gonna fix this, man. The guy's got an Oscar, you know. Yeah. And so then he comes out. He's like, nah, divorce has got to stay. That's what you filmed. That's what's in there. This is what we're gonna do. And it's like, all right, Bob, you're up. Bill?
Did you watch Bill's edit about divorce before you told him it wouldn't work? Do you remember any of this?
I mean, we watched cuts, and it was pretty like similar to this. It was similar to the trajectory that it was on. You know, he was taking my scripts and going like, okay, well, let's work with that. And move ahead. You know?
So one of the discussion points in this article that was interesting is the way that you guys over the years have talked about doing a sequel or a behind the scenes or something like that. And one of the things that this article does not put to rest is if there will be a sequel or behind the scenes or an alternative edit. Maybe Bill's edit comes out in the future. I mean,
now you know what, like this article, like it basically is that.
Okay, for sure. Look, years removed, I love The Drifter. I watch it around once a year. I love Malali, right? All the surf footage that didn't make it into The Drifter that got released after the fact. I mean, so much good and so much inspiration came out of it in the long run. And it's interesting looking at how your story kind of comes full circle at the end of this thing. I mean, I think I only learned this yesterday. You have a new job. What is your new job? What are you doing nowadays?
I'm the editor of Surfer's Journal now.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very, very fun looking job from the outside.
Yeah.
And how did that happen, and when did that take place?
Yeah, so it's interesting. This issue out, this volume 29.1 has my name as editor of Surfer's Journal on the front, but like, I didn't really make this issue. It was like it was a little bit of optics. Like, okay, well, Nathan is the editor now, and it takes a month or two for an issue to come out, so let's just get his name up there. But it also looks like that. It looks like I came in, ran my own giant feature, and then in the liner notes there's a surf photo of me in the back. So it's like I came in, ran my feature, put a surf photo of me in the back. You're gonna see a lot more of this. You're gonna see. I'm gonna interview myself in the next issue. You know, like to me, I'm like cringing a little bit. I'm like, oh god.
But for the record, you didn't make those decisions.
No,
a separate editor greenlit this
I
piece.
didn't.
Someone else put a photo of you surfing in there.
Yeah.
But it is comedic. It does look like welcome to the Myers magazine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the next 30 years is
Yeah.
photos of me shredding and long form articles.
I mean, I am excited to dig into like, you know, big topic essay. I'm just excited to like take on the stories that I want to be in there, you know, because I don't want to stop doing that. But like the greatest pleasure of this job is being able to bring so many other people's ideas and stories to light.
Well, I'm excited to see where it goes, and I hope we can do a sequel of this conversation at some point, because it's just fun to see how you work, and it's interesting to hear you talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Thanks,
What have we
man.
missed? We missed anything in this conversation?
You know, like I brought in a visual aid from the writing of the Drifter article, because I mean,
I'd love to include it in the show notes.
To go back to the article was like, it kind of took me like 4 or 5 years to write that piece. You know, not like working around the clock on it, obviously, but just to sort of get it out of myself. And I'd sort of pitched it to the journal like, hey, let's do a profile of Rob Machado. You know, like he's at this point in his life, he's like shaping surfboards now, and he's just at this, he's like evolved to a different Rob almost. That thing ballooned and ballooned and ballooned, and it was almost a book at one point. We had a book, like we had someone ready to publish a book, but they were just like, do you really want to do this? It's going to be a long road, and then who's reading that? And it was kind of like, yeah, maybe it's just better to like boil it down, because it got really big.
So how many, while you grab this, how many words is this piece, and how many words was the book?
That piece, I think, came down to like 6,500 to 7,000 words, which is one of the longest pieces the journal's published. That's like a lot. And so we couldn't run as many photos as we wanted to, because it was such a word-dense read. I started like saving this like draft.
Oh my gosh.
But this is me like working on.
Oh my gosh.
But what I do is I take.
Wait. We have to. So I want to encourage everyone right now to look at. You'll see this in the show notes. I am looking at. I mean, what is this? A 4-inch stack of scraps, papers, blue paper, white paper, yellow paper, pads of paper, paper that you may have pulled from the back of an airline magazine. I don't know. All scribbled, I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, what I do is I fold these pieces of paper and I start writing them, and I create all these like chapters and structures and stuff, and then I'll just like be like,
wait, give me this thing.
Not that one.
Wait. So you just handed me this. I have maybe 9 or 10 sheets of paper in my hand. They're folded in half like a book, and you have like in cartoon writing on the left, written really big, mythology and the modern Rob Machado, goals, touch dozens of Rob's iconic moments, show why he's so iconic, create an accurate portrait. I mean, this is unbelievably detailed, dude.
Drafts and drafts and drafts of it, and then I'll sit, if I get one of those that I kind of like, I'll sit down and type the whole thing up, and then I'll start doing that again to it. And then I'll just do that again. I'll go back to the handwritten thing, and I'll just keep doing that until I can almost recite the thing off the top of my head. It becomes like I don't know, like if you do something over and over, it's like the 10,000 hours theory or something, you know, or like learning a musical song. You just sit there and play it over and over and over until it's almost muscle memory.
So in my hand, I'm holding a printed piece of paper that says draft number 17, and this might be 25 pages or something. And you're telling me you basically create this typewritten draft based on this stack of notes, and then you go and you re-handwrite it before you make another typed up draft?
Yeah, I love handwriting them all. My hand will get sore and stuff, but that's how my brain connects to my hand or something, you know? Like typing just doesn't, like, I do type this up, and then when I type up a handwritten draft, it becomes it evolves from there as well. But I need to slow myself down. I can write too many words. It's not like, am I going to reach this word count? It's like, how do I get down to that word count with all this stuff
have you heard that
I want to
saying?
say?
Have you heard that saying? I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. That's the hard part.
Absolutely,
is making your message concise.
Keeping things small.
I want to read something
really
here.
Hard.
This is something that I don't recognize from the article. I'm just holding draft 17 of it. It says,
nervous.
These impromptu paparazzi are a regular part of traveling with Rob Machado. He's approachable, friendly, and chill. The king of chill, in fact. He'd never refuse or dismiss a fan, often at the risk of missing a plane, interrupting dinner, or crashing a minivan. 2 decades after leaving the Pro Tour, Rob is still the most recognizable surfer in the world. That's been a really intriguing thing for me to learn and find out too, because in the article you write about one of the pivotal moments in The Drifter where Rob is walking and the real Rob comes face to face with the imagined Rob, and Rob is looking at an image of himself on a window and it's massive. And one of the interesting things about my job here has been getting to know the real Rob after knowing the imagined Rob for so many years before actually meeting him.
Totally.
And what you wrote here is just so true. I've never witnessed anyone able to just turn it on like Rob when you're having a conversation like this, and then someone shows up and he can immediately go, I'm the imagined Rob. I'm everything you hoped. And he goes into that and he'll be that. I've never witnessed.
But it's really who he is too. He just gives of himself to everybody. He's really one of the most like sincere, like nicest people I've ever gotten to work with, you know? And like, I was very just grateful for everyone to allow this, to let it be what it was, you know? So much of surf journalism is so kind of soft, you know? Like,
well, look, I'm thankful that it happened. You're a very good writer. I appreciate the piece so much. Like I said, it's something I've wanted for the last 10 years. You mentioned that Rob, he'll give himself, you know, freely to lots of people. He gave you and I an introduction. I gave you a Seaside and Beyond to try surfing the other day. I can't let you get out of here without your review. What kind of waves did you surf the Seaside and Beyond in? What did it feel like? How do you describe what the experience was like?
Well,
what fins did you use?
I don't even know what fins I put in. I have this bag of fins.
Bag of fins.
I found some that matched and stuff, and a lot of them are worn down and stuff. So I don't even know. Don't ask me about the fins, but I mean, coming back from Bali, I kind of had a struggle with Southern California waves for a while, and I just kept looking at it and going like, oh, this is what we're doing, really?
It's hard to get motivated.
It was really hard to get motivated for a while, and it's just kind of like cold and gray, and you know, I mean, this is where I grew up surfing. It's like I know it, but I'd been gone for 10 years, and I had it. So then I got a nice like old school 9.6 log, and that really like brought me back to it. I was just like, oh, I'm getting tons of waves and this is fun, and just trying to control all this weight and glide and stuff. Like you don't longboard in Bali really. Like the waves are good. You know? When the waves are good, all you need is your thruster. You know? So that got me stoked again. But then I was like, I'm starting to lean on this thing. That's kind of all I'm surfing. And I saw the Seaside and Beyond in Rob's room the other day. We were talking about something else, and I was like, that looks kind of like a kind of a bridge between those. You know, it looks like this great like wave catcher with a little bit of like turning energy towards the back. And he was like, yeah, check one out. So I had one small wave session on it like 2 days ago. So, and it was fun, but it felt like a guilty pleasure almost.
Really?
You know, I'm like, oh, it's such a wave catcher, and then it turns and stuff. So it was fun. But I almost felt bad about it.
Where did you surf it? Where were you?
I was at Terramar, which is kind of in front of my house.
Man,
and
most fun wave in the world 4 times a year. Other than that, it's just a tide sensitive bog.
It is tide sensitive, but I'd gotten into a kind of a rhythm of going out there because of my log addiction now.
Are you regular, goofy?
Regular.
Okay.
Regular. So I go way over to the right. But there's the lefts there too, so there's a lot of little waves out there.
I surfed one this morning at Terramar. I rode a Seaside and Beyond at Terramar. Right. Yeah.
It was smaller today, though.
It was
right?
so small. But like you said, I mean, it catches waves easy and then you can turn it. I've never felt guilty on it, but I do I have gone through that before when you just sort of feel like your greed can get the better of you when you're on a board that makes catching waves easy.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's a great board for here because, like, I don't know, so many of my shortboards feel sort of under. It's just, I don't know, just not catching all the waves and not really getting that much out of them. And I feel like it just feels like not the right board to be having here for, I don't know.
You know what I'd like to do? Maybe, and if you're not going to do this on your own at the Journal, your sort of perspective on how Bali's changed over the last 12 years would be cool. Whether we catch up again and do a sequel of this or make it a round table or you do a piece on it for the Journal, like that seems like an interesting story to hear of what the last 10, 15 years has been like over there.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a long conversation.
Okay, teaser for next time. Look, Nathan, I'm so stoked you came through. Thank you for writing the article. Best of luck at the Journal.
Fun to talk. I hope I didn't rub anyone the wrong way or tell any stories I shouldn't have.
Address all hate mail to Nathan Meyers at Surfers Journal. All right, now see, audible hand slap. Thanks for coming through, dude.